What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Buckeye-Film-Breakdown. As always, I am Jeremy. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. Wanted to jump on here tonight and kind of break down our thoughts and opinions. Ryan Day appeared on Pate State last Tuesday, the 12th, with Josh Pate, a guy who we've talked about a lot. We bring him up a lot because he's really good at what he does. We're going to just kind of hit some of the stuff that jumped out to us, how we take it, because Ryan Day is really, really good at coach speak. And yeah, we appreciate you guys tapping in. Buckeye-Film-Breakdown.com. Tap into the community if you're watching this on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify and enjoying it for free. There's way more content through the community. Tap in. I know you really like Pate. So what was your first impression of, how he handled this interview?
Yeah, I think he just asked the right questions. I think he asked questions that people really want to know, and I think that he asked questions that are very informative for fans, and I love that. I think he does a great job of looking at it from a fan perspective, and he asks questions that are kind of challenging, and it's good to hear those perspectives of the coach and kind of how they navigate things, because this is an unprecedented time in college football, and so you do want to hear how your coach is navigating these times. And like you said, Coach Day is the king of coach speak, but he also understands he knows when to kind of open up and give you more information than he probably should, because he knows that is what Buckeye Nation deserves at times. And I think he opens up at the right time. And I also think he does a really good job of opening up at the right time for the right people, so that people in these upper admin spots or boosters or donors can hear him say these certain things so they can step up at the right time. And I think he gets served up some of those questions as well. So I think Pate does a really good job asking those good questions, man.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously we're not going to rehash the questions because we want to build off of what Coach Day said. The first thing that kind of jumped out, he made a comment about how as a program, you have to always be looking ahead now. I thought that was a really eye-opening statement, because it really gives you true insight into what he is trying to accomplish as a program builder.
Yeah, and when you coach at a place like Ohio State, and not just Ohio State, and when you really think about it, when you coach in the MAC level, when you coach at the Division II level, you always have to think about what's next. And that's the unfortunate reality of coaching in big time college football with the transfer portal. You see the kids having a successful year, they're having a breakout year. You have to start thinking like, man, they're helping us win games. Are they going to be here next year? Right? Right. And so for Coach Day, it's like, what is going to happen next? Are these guys going to hop in the portal? What portal additions are we going to have? Okay, Bo Jackson had a great season. After the season, he's probably going to ask to have more money. And that's why you see these programs have such huge staffs, because he has those guys like the Mark Pantonis and his staff who are able to look ahead, while Coach Day is able to focus on football only. And that is so vital. And that's why you're seeing these guys like Mark Pantoni get paid a lot of money, because they can afford to look ahead, and they can give him, the forecast, looking out.
Right.
Okay, Coach Day, we have a weekly forecast meeting. Hey, this is what we're kind of seeing with the numbers, projections based on where we are stat wise. You're looking at probably having to allocate this amount of money for this person. So this is some of the things you may want to think about. Now you can get back to game planning. So you have no other choice but to look forward and think about building and building and building if you want to stay relevant in today's world.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was just really insightful, because it's almost like in this interview, and I really suggest if you've got 45 minutes, go watch it, because it's almost vulnerable Ryan Day.
Yeah.
Like, he really kind of let the guard down. But you still see Ryan Day being Ryan Day. So they ask about recruiting, and he was talking about how, this isn't just about the parents. it's the coaches, it's high school coaches, college coaches. They are all mentors to these kids. And he dropped a line, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, what are we doing for 18-year-old Joe Schmo to help him be a better version of 30-year-old Joe Schmo? Be it, working with them on financial responsibility, making sure they finish school. Money is money in the NIL world. We know that.
Yeah.
But that's what's starting to set some schools apart. Yes, there are always going to be the schools who are spending money. Right now, obviously, Texas Tech is kind of the fresh spender, I guess you would say. We know A&M is going to spend money. We know Miami is going to spend money. Texas, I think what they're going to start doing, and we've hit on it a little bit in some recruiting stuff, I think they are locking in on one position per cycle.
Yeah.
That they really spend a lot of money on. Last year it was D tackles. This year it's receivers.
Yeah.
With adding Cam Coleman. I can't think of the other guy they added off the top of my head. But we've heard horror stories, going back to the AAU basketball days of everybody's got an uncle. So as somebody who has seen some recruiting stuff, has coached, you've seen some of this stuff. And obviously you've coached guys who have played at Ohio State. You've coached guys who are going to, Ohio Wesleyan or whatever, just a small school to where NIL is not really a factor. But as coaches, how do you handle what he was saying about, trying to get these guys to understand, yes, we're coaching 18-year-old you, but we're trying to help mold 30-year-old you.
No, I love that saying. I love that quote that, we're trying to develop the 30-year-old you. I think that's huge. I think that is helping coaches understand the responsibility that we have. And I think for a lot of us, that's why we got into coaching. And that's one of the things that it's one of the reasons why I got into coaching. Like, it's great to win all these games. Obviously, we all want to win. We hate losing.
Right.
But as a high school coach, yes, it's awesome to see you succeed and to get these good grades and to do a lot of great things in high school. But if you have the desire to go play at the next level, what am I doing to help the 22-year-old version of you, the 21-year-old version of you? Am I helping instill that discipline in you that's going to allow you to persevere during those tough times when you get to college? And those of players who may not go play in college, what am I doing to help you, become the best version of yourself, whether it's going straight to the workforce, or what am I doing to help you become the best version of a father, husband, things like that. Like, those are things that you have to be very real about, because if you're real about those things, that's when the kids buy into what you are wanting out of this program. And so I think that's so important. And that applies at every level. That applies down to the very, very youth levels of flag football, and it goes all the way up to the NFL. Like, the guys want to know that you care about them and you're trying to develop them in some manner. John Calipari used to say something to me, or not to me, but that always stood out to me, because he was everybody always used to say John Calipari was somebody who was very dirty,
Right.
used to do slimy things, right? And he may have, don't get me wrong, but there was one thing that he said that he was always trying to do with his guys at Kentucky, and that was help them to be financially responsible, because he had a specific player that he was recruiting. He knew that they were going to be one and done. How can I help them be prepared so that when they get this first paycheck in the NBA, that they are going to be set for the rest of their life? And so he had them taking certain classes. He had them, meeting with financial advisors. He had them talk. He had meetings with their parents. And one of the pieces of advice he gave them was, when you get that first $1 million, you put it away, you put it in a special account where you can live off the interest for the rest of your life. You do not touch that first $1 million. And I always thought that was awesome to hear a coach being real with them about their money. Yep. And not many people were afraid to do that. And I know John Calipari gets a bad rep, but those are real conversations that these guys need to have. And I love that Coach Day is willing to put people around these guys to have those tough conversations about your future, because that is so important. I love that he talks about what's going to happen in their future. Like, hey, this is what Columbus can provide you when you are done playing in the NFL, or if it doesn't work out, you can come back to Columbus and these things are available for you here in Central Ohio. So I love the fact that he's looking out for that 30-year-old version of these guys, man, because not everybody's going to make it into the NFL. Not everybody's going to have a 10-year career. Not everybody's going to earn a huge payday. So I think it's a good talking point to have with our guys.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, obviously you hear all the time of, pro athletes that go broke and that type of thing. And, with these kids getting the money sooner, it's really cool to see. Like, I think Travion Henderson and G. Scott were flipping houses while they were in school. That's residual income. That's how you build yourself. So obviously it's working. It's just a matter of let's keep grinding on it. Kind of pivoting to the new challenges, I guess you would say, of college football is kind of how I labeled this next part of the interview. Thought it was interesting to hear Ryan Day just call it what it is and go that chaos is natural. College football has always been chaotic, but now you add in the portal, the calendar, and everything like that. It's cool to hear the coaches say what we've all been thinking.
Yes, absolutely. It's common sense.
Right.
It doesn't take, a rocket scientist to realize that this is just nuts. And so it's great to hear these coaches say what we're all thinking, like you said, but it's so true. And these guys would know best because they're in it and they are immersed in it and they are racking their brains, and you're seeing coaches want to leave because of it. But luckily, Coach Day is locked in and he's fully immersed and diving into it. And so it is great to hear that, man, because it does make you feel less crazy when you know that the head coach of your favorite team is also saying, like, dude, this sucks.
Right.
It's just chaotic, man.
So the next little bit's kind of I don't want to say it's convoluted because he kind of skipped around a little bit, but it all encompasses the same area under the challenges. NIL. He basically said, yes, NIL is a massive part of the picture, but at the end of the day, NIL and all of the branding things that go along with it are still second to being a Buckeye, which is what, you've said it all along, as we want kids who want to be here.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more uncommon, but I think you're starting to see that shift again. I think kids are understanding if I'm getting developed, I can take a little bit of a pay cut to go somewhere, because Ohio State is not going to blow the budget on high school kids. It's just not happening. Like this recruiting cycle, tight end recruiting. They were after a big fish. I'm sure they gave their number, and he committed to Texas this week. So you start looking down the pecking order, and the next 4 or 5 guys are all projected to go elsewhere. But look at the success Ohio State has had with tight ends in the portal. So why spend an insane amount of money on an unproven commodity, especially if they don't want to be a Buckeye, like Ryan Day said?
Yeah, and I think Ohio State's done a really good job of really navigating who wants to be a Buckeye and who wants to be a Buckeye, plus who can we pay more money to that also wants to be here. I think that's a tough thing to do, right? Figuring out who actually wants to be here versus who is telling me they want to be here so that we can pay them more money, right? And I think they're doing a pretty solid job of figuring that out. And I think it just comes with fully vetting the guys. And that's why Coach Day is going to have one of the biggest staffs in the country. That's why Mark Pantoni's staff is massive, because you need to have guys that are going to burn the midnight oil to make sure that they are turning every stone to get into the realm of these recruits so they can understand if these guys want to be Buckeyes or not, and if they're worth that type of money. And if they're not, then we're going to move on to the next. And so I think it's a good strategy that we have in place. And it's also not a strategy that we have like Clemson had a couple years ago, where they were just like, we're not going to play NIL at all. Like, no, we're still going to play NIL and we're going to pay you very well, but your butt better want to be here.
Yep.
And if you don't want to be here, that's when we're not going to pay you. And I think it's real. And I think it's good to be upfront with the guys about that too. And they feel it. I mean, you could look at, who we're getting to commit and the recruiting classes that we've had. Like, we're still getting top tier talent. And I'm not going to complain about it. I think Coach Day has done a really good job of navigating this, and it will be interesting to see, if that trend continues and, where they divvy up the money moving forward. Maybe are they going to adopt that Texas model where that money goes to one position group per cycle? Like, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and I think you kind of saw the ramifications of that this past portal season, I guess you would say, with the number of young guys who went into the portal.
Yeah.
Guys who, were going to have a chance to contribute, guys who came in highly regarded, guys who had been Buckeyes for a long time in their recruitments. And then they tried to play the game. At the end of the day, you hate to keep saying it, but like, dudes don't just leave to leave. There's either a playing time issue, but like guys this young, it's obviously playing time and or money or both.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting. There's a dude out there, I can't think of his name, who is kind of getting himself involved. We've talked about how representatives for NIL deals don't have to be certified. And he's basically putting a fence around the state of New Jersey. And so, Quincy Porter, for example, sounds like he had his hands in that deal. So that'll be worth monitoring. Obviously, if more comes out, it'll be interesting to look at and discuss. Next thing that they kind of went down the road of, they asked Ryan Day, what's the difference of a kid who, they use Glenville as an example. A Glenville kid who you've recruited, has been in your program for 3 years, and a kid who comes in fresh out of the portal. What sets them apart? And Ryan Day said the biggest thing that these kids from the portal have got to understand is that Ohio State is not like everywhere else, which I think he kind of gave us the spoiler to that when he made the comment about, if you don't come here expecting to be a first or a second round pick, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, that is why people come to Ohio State. It is to be developed and to help yourself get to that next level and to be a top round draft pick and go make a lot of money in the NFL, right? That's typically why people come here. Obviously, people want to come here to be Buckeyes, yes, and they want to be a part of the brotherhood. But when you transfer here, it's to likely improve your draft stock. That is what they're doing. When you come out of high school, especially from a program like Glenville, there's that tradition, there is that lineage of just great Buckeyes who've come out of that school from Coach Ginn, and then they want to be Buckeyes, but then they also look at the success of those players and what they've done from Ohio State in the NFL, and so they know the pathway. And so if it doesn't happen right away as a freshman, I know they have somebody that they can look back on and say, okay, this person Arvell Reese didn't play a ton right as a freshman, but a sophomore and junior season, he took off, and then boom, now he's a top 5 draft pick, right? And so I think that might be a little bit of the difference, but nonetheless, they're both coming here for the same reason. And I think that is important for people to know, because that's what breeds competition. Like, that's what breeds champions, is that competition piece. And so when those transfers come in, it's like, you're going to have these young hungry dudes who want the same exact thing you want. Like, it's not going to be easy. And I think you see that with guys like Terry Moore and some of the other transfers. They saw real quick, like, oh crap, like, this is not like where I was,
Yep.
and I think that is I think that is the big difference. And I think that's why Coach Day did say, like, it's not like anywhere else. Like, everybody that we recruit is pretty freaking good, typically come from some really good programs. So you better come here ready to work.
Yeah, and then he kind of pivoted. It was really cool to hear him again verbalize some of this stuff. So they started talking about how a lot of the guys they go after in the portal, there is some sort of connection. Be it a kid they recruited in high school, i.e. Caleb Downs. Be it an Ohio kid that, you can talk to the coach or whatever. But he actually went as far as to say that, they called Caleb Downs and talked to him about Quay Rusall, James Smith, and even Earl Little. And, Coach G and Terry Moore have a relationship from Duke.
Yeah.
It was just, we've kind of assumed those types of things. Obviously, there are probably variables out there. I couldn't put together a link to Devin McEwen off the top of my head. But like you had Coach Hank with Kyle Parker. And obviously some of it, I think, like Quinshawn, he knew he wanted to go somewhere where there was another back that he could share time with.
Yep.
And I'm sure there was somebody on the team who Quinshawn, IGB. I don't know if he was the middleman, but he would have known IGB from Ole Miss.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of the reason why Ohio State likes to recruit out of high school from these notable programs is because a lot of these programs are going to be producing high-end Division I talent. So if we can get a kid from St. Thomas Aquinas who they recruit or they send out a bunch of D1 talent all the time, and now somebody in this class goes into the portal, well, now the Wyatt Smith guy that we just got, maybe he's got a connection with the, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's that connection and down the road when they hop into the portal, okay, now we can go tap into that. And I think that's huge because that recruitment never stops.
Nope.
And that is so important to always have those positive relationships. And that is one of the things, taking it back to high school, we always tell our players, never be disrespectful to a coach, and always, even if you're committing to another school, show that respect and always let them down. Like if you're going to say, hey, coach, I'm going to be committing somewhere else, I truly appreciate everything that you've done for me as far as the recruitment process, the way you talk to my family. But unfortunately, like this is the direction we're going to go. But again, I just want to thank you. Like you do it the right way.
Yep.
You call them, you don't send them a text, you do it in a respectful way so that, hey, 2 years, not maybe the situation I want to be, or I'm balling, but I do want to go to Ohio State now because I want to get some more money. So-and-so coach is still there. You still have that good relationship with them. It's going to make it easier for them to recruit you. So, yeah, the recruiting never stops, man, and it's always good to have those connections. And I think Ohio State's got a ton of them, obviously, across the country.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my son's sports is a lot different than football. But when he made his decision and committed, the schools who were kind of his final, 3, 4, 5, who he had those conversations with the coaches, all the time, he called to let them know. The schools who he had kind of eliminated from his process pretty early, he did do via email or text, but he hadn't really built that rapport.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're spot on though. You don't want to ever burn a bridge, and that's not even just in football. Obviously, that's in life. And Day kind of capped off that part of the conversation by talking about how you still have to earn the respect, and that falls on the quote unquote culture setters. I thought that was a cool term to hear him throw around because you do have those guys that have been here 3, 4, 5 years who committed to Ohio State coming out of high school, never wavered, and sailed the course.
Yeah, you've got those culture setters, man, and I think that's so important for those guys when you bring in these new recruits, you bring in these transfer portal guys, that they set the culture. They set the standard for when these guys set foot on campus. I think, it's one of the reasons why a guy like Brandon Ennis didn't go on the Buckeye cruise, because he did want to set that standard. And I think it's the reason why guys like Luke Montgomery decide to come back for their senior year and Carson Hinsman, so they can set that standard for these new guys that are coming in, because it does mean something to them. And I think it's huge. Those culture setters have to do a great job
Yes.
of establishing themselves as leaders. If they don't, now you're looking at some cracks in the armor and some cracks in the foundation, and you're not going to get to where you need to be. But those culture setters step up and they do what they have to do. I think it's a recipe for success. And you can see, like in 2024, 2025, what happened when those transfers came in. We had guys that stepped up and really set the tone, and it led us to a national championship when it mattered the most. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably my favorite part of the interview was Ryan Day discussing how he feels an incoming freshman, or let's just call it a high school recruit, should be in a program for 2 years before they can enter the portal. I thought that it was really cool to see, like, it makes total sense to me, because at that point, you're not locked into something super long term. You still have 2 years of eligibility, assuming you play both of those years.
Yeah.
But he really hammered on the fact that the way the calendar is right now, there's no cool down period for these kids.
Yeah.
You get there in spring, you have a fall that you don't love, boom, you're in the portal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2 years is a good number, because like you said, maybe you didn't play as a freshman and you only played in those 4 games, and then you end up redshirting. And so now that in that second season, you're a redshirt freshman still, and you're not getting the playing time you want. Now you can hop in the portal. You still got 3 years of eligibility left. Like, you actually gave it a go.
Right.
You tried to develop. You thought it was going to work out in a way, and it didn't, but you gave it a go. You were there for 2 seasons. I remember coming out of college or coming out of high school, my parents told me I had no choice. You're there for 2 years, and after 2 years, you can reevaluate. And
right.
if you don't like it after 2 years, then you bring your butt back to Ohio State Marion, and you'll graduate and you'll be a Buckeye, and it'll be a lot cheaper, right? Like, those were things that they straight up told me. And I think the parents could really step up, and the people in their lives could step up and really help them in that process. But the different motivations and different things happen when they get on campus. But I think 2 years is a good number. Will it happen? Obviously, you're going to have people that jump in after their first year all the time. Like, that's never going to change. But it would be nice to see people give it 2 years at least.
Yeah, I think that is a really good plan, honestly. And you're starting to see a lot of schools want to lock kids into longer NIL deals anyway. So the two could really go hand in hand, and it could actually be beneficial to, of all people, the student athlete, the person that matters. But as long as, Uncle Rico's got his hand out and trying to help negotiate the NIL deal, it's going to be hard to get that to go through. They then kind of pivoted the conversation to coaching. And they asked about the insane amount of mid-year coaching changes this year, which obviously Ohio State fell victim to having a coordinator get courted during the season. We think there were effects of that. And he just talked about how disruptive it is, and that the problem he sees right now, to kind of bring all of this together that we've talked about, is the college football calendar is being talked about in fragmented conversations. You're having these conversations about, when does the portal open? When does the CFP start? But you're not having all of these conversations together, because ultimately they should be an all-encompassing conversation, because you can't have the portal open while the CFP is still going on if you want to do right by the teams that are in the playoff.
I agree 100%. And I do think, having that connected structure would be extremely important to making sure everybody's on the same page and to make things way less chaotic. Will it happen?
Who knows?
I don't know.
I mean,
but I do think Coach Day is correct. The calendar sucks. It is terrible.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. You're putting the coaches in a bad spot. You're putting the players in a bad spot. Everybody is in a bad spot. A lot of the coaches get bad reps for leaving when they do. But sometimes it's the calendar leaves them with no choice. And it's hard to pass up on a job when you can't push it off. You got to make your decision now before the bowl game because of this and because of that. It's a mess. It's a hot mess.
Yeah, I mean, you've got guys sitting out bowl games, which, obviously in a lot of circumstances, I get that. But, this year to the point you had teams opting out of bowl games because they don't have rosters.
Yeah.
It's just insane. And then
insane.
The last point they kind of talked about was coaching hires, to pivot off of the mid-year coaching change and that type of thing. And they asked Ryan Day, what do you look for in coaches? Because you've been fairly successful. And he said it's a lot of reflection on what do we as a program need to be better at and do best. And then you also have to look at these coaches like players to where they need to embrace at OSU or embrace being at OSU and what it means, because just like with players, it is different.
It is, man. You couldn't ask for a better answer from our head coach. And Ohio State is different, and you need coaches that have a thick skin that can embrace it. Because if things aren't going well, you're probably going to hear about it. You might have some for sale signs in your front yard. Your address may be posted online. Google Maps screenshots may occur somewhere on a Reddit page. Like
the fringe.
Those things will happen, but you have to be willing to accept that to be a coach at Ohio State. The other part of that, too, is you really have to make sure that you are aligned with Coach Day. And the one thing I love that Coach Day said right there is what is best for the players. So many times coaches' egos get in the way.
Yes.
And I have this structure, I have that structure. This is what we need to do. This is what I expect us to do. Coach Day has a way that he wants the offense and the defense to look. Coach Day has gotten to the point in his career where he is comfortable having people stay within that structure, but do it their way. And I absolutely love that. And I think it's taken guys like Jim Knowles, like Chip Kelly, like Matt Patricia, now Arthur Smith, that have made him way more comfortable in doing so because they have so much knowledge and experience. And that is not an easy thing to do as a head coach. And so for him to come out and say that, that's like a humbling of yourself, because at the end of the day, I'm not out there playing, although I'm getting the largest check. I'm not out there playing. Julian Sayin is the one taking the snaps. Bo Jackson's the one running the ball. Luke Montgomery's the one that's pulling on counter. Those are the guys that are out there doing the work. And so everything must come back to the players. And I think that's so important that he said that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of the stuff that jumped out to me. Anything we didn't hit on that jumped out to you through that interview?
I think one of the things, and this is just one of the things I look for in coaches that I respect, like the money, the facilities, all the resources, those are always important, but you win with people. People are the most important, and you need to have good people in your program. And I just love that consistent message. And I think I love that Coach Day is trying to find good people. I love that. And you can never have too many good people that know the game of football, that know how to recruit, that are the best GMs, that are the best, analysts. You can never have enough good people. And so I love the fact that is one of the big parts of his strategy in getting people here, It's just making sure we have good people. So, Coach Day, you're doing a good job. Let's keep it up.
Yeah, awesome interview, and I'm interested to actually go back and watch because like every big time coach is doing this series.
Yeah.
He's already posted with Signetti after day. That should be an entertaining interview.
Absolutely, it will be.
So yeah, that'll kind of wrap up this episode. We will see you guys later this week with the defensive edition of the Horseshoe Index, where we pick some stocks, and we will see you then.